back here.
So that's what I was going to ask you, man. So you were rocking with Reggie and them back in the day. So like,
I mean, literally, I can recall, man. Like, I remember one time we were in the playoffs. I want to say this was like '98. This is before we had the run when we got beat by the Lakers in 2000.
Okay.
But this is right when Jordan was on his way out. I don't know if you guys remember the game. Reggie pushed Jordan.
Oh yeah.
Right? And he ended up getting that three. But I think we lost the next game. Man, I had tears rolling down my face. Man. Like it was, it was like Jordan. It was at that point where, I think because I'm 36, right? And during that time, I don't think I truly appreciated Jordan's game.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
He was a great player, but then
now,
hindsight's 2020, just reflecting on like his drive, his skill set, and really just his, dog mentality out there on the floor where literally, I mean, I see videos where guys are talking about they feared Jordan, right?
Yeah.
With him. I didn't necessarily, I wasn't in that level of thinking of like really truly respecting him as a player. It was more so like, man, I just want to see the Pacers win, and we could never get over that hump. Man. Never could get over that hump, man. But nonetheless, we had our chance in 2000, and Kobe, Kobe set it off on us.
He's the same type of player though. Like you didn't genuinely appreciate his game until unfortunately now that he's passed, it's almost like, man, you can respect his work ethic. You can respect what he did after the game too.
Right.
Because he found his niche. He wanted to do something and give back, which is super. I mean, that was awesome. And still be close with his kids, which is cool too.
But when I look at those players, man, like of course their mentality sets them apart in comparison to the average athlete that's out there on the floor with them. But really what stands out, man, and we had a conversation about this in the barbershop the other day. What stands out to me, particularly in Kobe's, instance, and of course Jordan, because Kobe is in many ways, he modeled his game from Jordan.
No doubt. Yep.
But Kobe, man, he seemed as if he was obsessed with the fundamentals.
Oh yeah,
basics, right? And I watched this video of him talking about the interviewer asked him, say, "Hey, man, why does NBA players, particularly American athletes, struggle overseas, right? Struggle international play when it comes to like the Olympics?" And he broke it down and simply said, "Man, it's all about the show and bow here. You know what I mean? It's and out there is about the fundamentals."
Yep.
So now, like, looking at Lukic, where he dropped, what was that, 76?
Yeah.
And when you're watching the highlights, I mean, it's nothing real fancy. It's just fundamental feet movement, you know what I mean? And positioning the ball and moving slow. So it's like,
that's what all those, European guys, like even Jokic and stuff, like there's nothing flashy to his game.
Yeah.
He is just fundamentally sound. He knows where to put the ball. He knows, distribute all that stuff that like a big guy, all these guys now. The only one who's like really, I think, like a freak athlete from, overseas is like Giannis. He's like the outlier, but like Ginobili back in the day, fundamentals, right? Tony Parker, fundamentals. Like everything was based around that, right? Dirk, so it's just, he's right, man. I think I have seen that video you're talking about too, where he's talking about that.
Yeah, just straight fundamentals, man. But my apologies, didn't mean to take the conversation.
No, man. This is
our language, man.
Yeah, you're good. And honestly, David, what was really cool is, you spread the same message that John and I stand for.
Yeah.
It's all about empowering yourself. But it's also switching that mindset and understanding that you control your life. You also control your thoughts. Your thoughts don't control you. And what impressed me right now is you said you have 3 kids.
Yeah.
But you still take care of yourself. You still prioritize your health, both physically and mentally. And I feel like that's where people often neglect themselves.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, I don't have the energy to do like a side hustle, or I don't have the energy to start doing my passion. But it's like, okay, well, if you actually start to work out or exercise, move, if you start to maybe do some things to empower your mindset, it's almost like a switch will be flicked.
I think where and particularly from a man's perspective, right? Where I've had this conversation with many brothers where they're like, "Hey, I got kids now, I got a career, I don't have time to, like, to your point, invest in my health, go to the gym, train, so to speak, or pursue something that I'm truly passionate about." And I believe, man, it's important for us as we grow to begin to adopt the mindset that you can't do those things. How can I phrase this? Your focus should not be on saying, hey, I can't do this because of my circumstance or the environment that I'm in. It's like, no, you need to do this because of the circumstance or the environment that you're in, right? It's about legacy, right? I mean, I'm quite sure just this brief moment that we've interacted with one another, I can tell you guys are probably big on leading by example, right?
No
Your
doubt.
daughters, your sons, right? That's what's most important. You want to set the tone for them so they can develop productive and successful habits and maintain an effective mindset and understand that, like, you're not just here just to be occupied in space.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you're not here just to soak up oxygen. No, you were created and designed for a specific purpose. And to truly be effective in your purpose, you got to master your mindset. You have to optimize your health, right? You have to take care of yourself to step into your role that you've been destined and designed to fulfill. Otherwise, man, you know, we're leaving success on the table. We're missing out on opportunities. And most importantly, you know, we're diminishing and reducing our quality of life. Right. You know, it's about you being the best version of yourself where, you know, your mental health is where it needs to be. Physically, you're where you need to be. Your immune system is equipped to begin to combat whatever, you know, viruses or bacteria is thrown your way. I mean, there's so many benefits as it relates to us just taking care of ourselves. The list can go on and on, man.
Yeah. And it's got to evolve too. Like, it can't be the same. You have to find new ways to evolve those things to get better physically, mentally, spiritually, all that stuff like that. I saw a really cool quote today that said, don't live the same year 75 times and call it a life.
Yeah.
Because it's just not what it is. And it was like, oh man, that's really good. Like, it just shows you, like, and we've heard people talk about this in the past too, where it's like every single year you want to be almost unrecognizable to who you were the year before. Like, you want to have that many leaps and bounds of growth. Yeah. And you got to find ways to do that. And there's no better why in that than your family and your kids. Like, that should be your motivation to kind of move forward and grow every time. Yeah.
I tell many leaders that the moment in the day that we stop striving for more in life, that will become the moment in the day that we start accepting less. Right. You know, accepting something less than what we're truly capable of experiencing. Right. And Nelson Mandela said it best. He said, there's no passion in settling for something less than what you're capable of experiencing, so to speak. And, you know, to that point that I'm making, what helps us strive for more, right, is establishing that purpose, establishing that goal, establishing a vision for your life and working towards something. And that can change. Right. You know, when I was in my 20s, man, I was competing heavily in the sport of boxing. You know, that's what got me into the gym and training right on a consistent basis. Now, you know, again, I'm 36. I can't step in there with them young dudes. I'm gonna let them have it. Right? but I'm still challenging myself physically, right? As I'm training, whether it's through calisthenics, weightlifting, on the schedule and agenda this year, man, I'm looking to run a mini marathon, a couple Spartan races. So you create, you know, this level of internal competition where you're aiming to be better than yourself, right? Aiming to strive for more. And then that focus, right, that you have towards that purpose or that objective is going to drive you to invest in yourself, right? I got to get my mind right. You know, I got to get my body right. I've got to be there emotionally in order to create the success that I envision. And that process, that's what it's all about. It's the process that's helping us become who we potentially can be. It's not just doing it, right? Anybody can do it. It's a matter of us enduring that process. That process is developing our character, is increasing and improving our discipline, is making us better individuals and leaders as a whole because we're stepping into something that we're aiming to accomplish.
This is goddamn gold, and we haven't even really started. But hey, this is goddamn gold.
It's great, man. It's great.
Yeah, and before like we officially get started, even though we could still use this, but you know what was fascinating is you touched on that you're going to be doing something hard physically. And I think that's huge. And people don't do that. And it's like when you actually push yourself physically, that's when you're actually pushing yourself mentally. And it shows what you're physically capable of. And then you're almost like pushing away those blinders to say, holy shit, if my body's capable of this and I push through mentally, I'm capable of so much more. I'm leaving so much on the table. Like we're doing something hard this year. I mean, I genuinely believe that you have to push yourself physically
Yeah.
to just show yourself what you're truly capable of once you train and put the work in.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, brothers. Like, all of us have knowledge that we don't necessarily apply, wisdom that we don't necessarily leverage on a continuous basis, and capabilities that don't necessarily show up, right, in our behavior, our day-to-day routine. And it's simply because, to your point, we're not challenging ourselves, right? You're not testing the limits. And challenging yourself, what that does is it forces you to recruit things within you that in many cases you didn't know existed. There's a quote that says, sometimes you don't know how strong you are until strong is your only choice.
Ooh, that's
right.
fire.
You know what I mean? It's like
right.
In many ways, we often underestimate what we're capable of, overlook the potential that we have, and really don't truly appreciate the greatness that's at work within us. But it's the challenges, it's the adverse conditions and circumstances in our life that pulls these things out of us, right?
Yeah.
Your back is up against the wall, right? You're building a business and you got to supply and provide for your family. You got to make this thing work.
Right.
You'll figure out skill sets and abilities and gifts and talents that you didn't necessarily knew you had prior to you stepping into that storm or that challenge.
Right.
And that's why I tell many people, man, the challenge is a gift. You know what I mean? There's value in every single experience. And as we look over our life, right, all three of us, the most growth that we experienced wasn't in our wins. It wasn't in our successes. It wasn't when everything was flowing well in our life.
Yep.
It's when we were, in the pit, right? We were in the struggle. We were in the valley, right? And we were going through something difficult where we had to be leveled up, right? We had to force ourselves to do something different, think different, approach it different, develop a different type of habit or mindset, whatever the case may be. And that brought out the best in us. And we were made better because of the challenge.
Amen to that, man.
True.
That's absolute truth. So let me ask you this now.
Yeah.
So hearing you talk and how passionate you are behind everything you say, you clearly believe every single word you say.
Yeah.
Where did that mindset for you come from then? Have you always had that mindset? Did you have a moment like that where your back was against the wall, where your mindset had to shift and brought you to the place where you are today? And then maybe tie that into maybe elevation is a must and how that started?
Yeah. So that's a great question, right? Elevation is a must. To kind of give context, it's a personal growth platform that I created. And this was birthed out of my struggle. You know what I mean?
So let's hear about it.
So really, man, long story short, because we may not have time to really unpack all of it, right? But long story short, right around 2012, I graduated from college, undergrad. And like many students, man, I didn't know what I wanted to do, right? You go through college, do all the courses, you get your major and you get your degree. It's like, man, I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do. But at the time, I was working in this corporate position. And I knew I wasn't using my gifts and my talents and leveraging my full potential. But at the end of the week, I was getting this thing that we call a paycheck. So in many ways, it made me feel comfortable, right? And I tell many people, I was comfortably dissatisfied. You know what I mean? I was comfortable in the position where I was in, but I was dissatisfied with the work that I was doing. Now, at the time, I was really struggling and battling with some internal conflicts, right? Some mental health challenges, depression. I really didn't have a sense of purpose. You know what I mean? I was lost and
I hear that.
trying to connect with myself, right? And I'm a man of faith at the time, and I was really developing my relationship with God, and I started diving into scripture and started, learning more about who I truly was, right? So mind you, at the same time, I'm still working in this position. And I can recall like it was yesterday, brothers, man. I was sitting on this counter in the office that I was working in, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. A voice, like the inner intuition said, I want you to travel and encourage individuals to master their mindset and live out their dreams. And I literally laughed out loud, fellas, like, because I'm in a space where I can't even do that for myself. Yep. You know what I mean? Like, I felt as if God himself was speaking to me and was calling me towards something. I'm like, man, what do you mean? I'm not qualified. I don't have what it takes. I don't have any experience in that space, right? And I'm dealing with my own internal struggles. So, mind you, in that moment, the seed was planted, right?
Mm.
It was planted in my mind. As I'm going through these struggles, I opened up a Facebook account. Before then, I wasn't doing anything on social media. I'm a quiet and reserved person. I'm very private in many ways. I was like, no, I have no business on social media. So people talked me into getting a social media account on Facebook, and I just started sharing insights, right? The same thing that I'm doing now, I started doing back then. And this is right around 2011, 2012. And people started to pay attention. People started to comment. People started to message me and say, hey, you know, that really resonated with me. That really spoke to me. And then my uncle passed in 2012. Now, me and my uncle had a special relationship. I would always give him a hard time, and he passed arbitrarily, like out of nowhere. So it hit my family very hard. Again, mind you, I'm very quiet and reserved, but at the same time, at his funeral, I had this compelling feeling, right, to speak, to encourage my family. So I went against my norm, challenged my personality in that moment, and I stepped up and I spoke from the heart. And by the end of that, people came up to me and said, hey, David, that really encouraged me. Like, hey, man, you were shining your light. I didn't think anything of it, right? I was just doing what I was going to do, right? And ultimately, there was a young lady at that funeral, and she was planning an event. And she said, hey, you know, we're looking for a keynote speaker for this summit that we're putting together. And I believe we found the person. I'm like, okay, who you got? And she was like, you. And I'm like,
Wow.
hold on, no. Now, she had the type of personality where she wasn't accepting no for an answer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
And this was November of 2012. The event was scheduled for April of 2013. So again, I was coerced into taking on this role. So ultimately, fast forward to that April, man, I'm having a panic attack before I'm stepping on that stage. I'm like, man, I'm about to go up there and embarrass myself. Nobody, you know, wants to hear anything that I have to say. I'm dealing with this imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Oh, real thing.
Inferior, insecure, right? And literally, man, ultimately what happened was, again, I felt as if it was God himself speaking to me saying, hey, pause. I need you to stop and I need you to breathe, right? And I was speaking at, it was a event at a church, right, for some young professionals and their youth group. And I was coming from the story of David, right? David and Goliath. And I heard the voice say, I need you to read the notes that you have, right? You're talking about David conquering his Goliath, and you're David, and the Goliath that you need to conquer is fear, right? And ultimately, in that moment, as I began to change the narrative in my head, the anxiety, the fear, the doubt, the overwhelm began to lift itself off of me, and I felt free. Like I felt an aura of confidence that I had never felt before in my life. I couldn't even sleep that night, right? The next day arrived, I stepped on stage, poured out my heart, right? And ultimately the same response. Now, mind you, these voices had been going on in my head for years. I grew up with a speech impediment, right? So I was very intimidated to talk and to express my ideas and to share my thoughts because I had convinced myself in so many ways that nobody wanted to listen. And I had bought into these lies that were going on in my head. Now I'm seeing the physical evidence of me opening up my mouth. And now there's a contradiction here.
Wow.
I started to buy into the physical evidence. And this is why I tell many people, you don't have to believe everything that you think. You know what I mean? And what I learned through that experience is that what the enemy sends after you is often an indication of what's at work within you. You know what I mean? Like my voice, my message, the inspiration that was on the inside of me was under attack because there's a reason why. Because if I unleash it, lives can be changed, minds can be renewed, perspectives can be shifted. So I often tell many people the area that you're most challenged, that's often the area where you're most gifted. Now, bringing it full circle, I know that was kind of taking it
No,
off.
that was great, man.
great.
I loved it.
But at that time, again, the seed was planted when the idea hit me as I was sitting in the office. The belief became established when I saw the physical evidence, right? Now, this evidence had crept in and it began to expand on the inside of me. And I started to believe, hey, maybe this is something that's possible, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
And I'm still working that job. And I started strategizing, right? I'm like, okay, how can I get into the speaking circuit? How can I share my message? What organizations can I connect with? How can I work on my craft? I joined a Toastmasters group and I started mapping out, okay, how can I take this full force, right? As speaking engagements are increasing and rolling in, I started coming up with a game plan. My grandmother always said, if you ever want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. I sat back and told myself, I said, man, hey, the top of the year, 2014, I was like, man, I'm gonna put myself in position to be able to take this on full force, right? I want to stack up some money. I want to put myself in a financial position where, hey, I've got some engagements coming in and we can build this thing from the ground up. October 3rd of 2013, fellas, they called me in. Again, I was in this sales position. Called me in and they laid me off.
Ooh,
now,
tough.
Mind you, right? Again, I worked in this position for close to 8 years. Never used a sick day, never used a personal day. On the day after my uncle passed away, I came in voluntarily just to clear my head because I enjoyed the space that I was in. I enjoyed the team that I was working with, right? This was a corporate decision. It wasn't like my actual regional decision.
Right.
I tell many people that particular, stance of where I was, not to toot my horn, but to show and to demonstrate that sometimes you can be doing everything right, but be in the wrong place. You know what I mean? Like, God had given me the vision. Hey, this is what I want you to do. And in many ways, I had the belief, but there was this thing that we call fear that continued to blind the possibilities in my mind. And I felt myself putting it off. Like, can I really do it? Is it truly possible? And when he gives you a vision, when you have a calling on your life, man, and all of us do, in many ways, he will kick you out the nest, right? As we talked about earlier, those challenges that we're presented with, they force you to level up. And now I've been kicked out the nest and he's demonstrating to me that you have wings, but it's up to you to leverage them. It's up to you to use them. And I remember I gave myself like 8 hours where I felt bad. I felt like, why me? You know what I mean? Like, I'm in this self-pity party. And then as I started thinking about it, I'm like, man, hold on, man. This is an opportunity, David. You had been given the vision, but you didn't necessarily have time because, again, I didn't really give, all the details. I'm working full-time. I had recently graduated from being a full-time student, but I was also a full-time athlete competing for USA Boxing, right? So I really didn't have that much time. I remember studying, the speaking craft and, how to start a business and falling asleep, with my head inside the books. I didn't have the luxury of time. So now I was laid off and I'm like, okay, now I can build this thing from the ground up. Fast forward to today. Ultimately built a community, man, just sharing content, got invited to more events. Since then, we've expanded not just to keynote addresses, but, I do coaching, group coaching, masterminds, and we have a content creation segment as well that's attached to my media production company. And in that, I have a documentary series, and we'll talk about that. I saw the question on the agenda. We'll talk about that later on during today's conversation. But all of that stemmed, again, from my internal struggles and me overcoming myself mentally, emotionally, psychologically, and just sharing those insights with others. So again, I said, long story short, I probably made a long story long, but that's the birth, the origin of Must.
That's awesome.
I love how that came from. It was something that you were already working on, but the decision was essentially made for you that it was time to take it on full force then. Like it was made for you at that point. Because if you think about it now, say that didn't happen and say you didn't get laid off, how far behind would you be now with where you stand currently?
Man, I was thinking about and I think about this from time to time. And my wife, a few months back, we actually had this conversation, and she was like, where do you think you would be if you, didn't get laid off? I said, in many ways, I think I probably would have still been there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just amazing how that works.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
and like I said, man, sometimes you get kicked out the nest. Like your life gets disrupted for a reason because we become so addicted to our comfort zones. And
Yeah.
in so many ways, like for so many people, sometimes we'll be addicted to our comfort zone in ways where what makes us comfortable can be detrimental.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Absolutely.
you can be in a toxic relationship, but you stay with that person because it's familiar or it's
Mhm.
comfortable. You can be in a workplace where, you know, it's not conducive to your passions or your purpose. And you're unhappy every time you step into the office, but you do it because it's comfortable. I've always been doing this, right? You know,
Yeah.
and I believe in those moments, we have to be willing to disrupt our comfort zones, or in some cases, if we don't do it, you know, again, when there's something that's been attached to your life, a calling, a purpose, and the gifts that you have, I believe sometimes, man, life will force you out of that so that you can be repositioned to do the things that you've been called to do.
No doubt.
And during that journey where you're trying to get, you know, elevation is a must off the ground, get your public speaking off the ground, was there any doubt in your mind, like, hey, you know what, maybe I should go back to corporate America, or you were dead set, hey, I'm doing this?
I was dead set, man.
Yeah.
I was like, I was committed. You know what I mean?
That's huge.
And I mean that to the true definition of it. I wasn't interested in building this business. I was committed, meaning I'm willing to do whatever is necessary. You know what I mean? I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to grow. I'm willing to stretch myself. And in some ways, I didn't even know what I was signing up for. You know what I mean? I think, you know, many small business owners can attest to this. If you knew everything that was involved with you building this,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have taken that step.
No.
Right.
And I think that's to our benefit that we don't know.
Oh yeah. That
You
being
know?
naive in that point is a benefit.
Yeah, you know, I mean, like, because you grow through those experiences, right? Like things that used to, you know, literally weigh me down when I initially started, and I'd be knocked down for a moment, right? You know, now I may experience that on a day-to-day basis, and it's a split second. It's like, okay, let's keep it moving. Let's pivot, let's adjust, but let's stay focused, right? But that experience is what teaches you that. But in many cases, if you can forecast, hey, to build this is the work that you have to put in, and also, hey, you're going to experience this particular challenge, and you're like, hold on, I don't know if I'm set for that challenge, right? I'm not signing up for that, right? But I think that's the beauty of life, where it's like watching a movie that you're sitting on the edge of your seat because it's so exciting and entertaining. There's ups and there's downs, but the downs make the ups well worth it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it makes sense.
Yeah. And you know what's really cool is you talk about taking advantage and being in tune with opportunities. You know, you were at your uncle's funeral where you took a sign where it's like, hey, I need to speak from my heart.
Yeah.
And from that, you then were approached about another opportunity.
Yeah.
And you took advantage of that. And so your purpose really evolved. And one of the questions that we get quite often, because we do a lot of speaking events as well, is how do you discover your purpose? Now, when you get that question, is there kind of any, I don't want to say formula you provide, but do you kind of urge people to try new things or discover, or what are they passionate about? How do you just get them to discover their path or purpose?
Well, it's twofold, right? Your purpose is going to reveal itself, right, in the things that you're interested in, the passions that you have. Now, I want to define the word passion because I think it's a word that's frequently tossed around and people don't necessarily know the true definition of it, right? Passion, the Latin root word of it is passio, and that simply means something that you're willing to suffer for, hence the passion of Christ. Right? So if I'm saying I'm passionate about a particular vision that I have, I'm indirectly saying I'm willing to suffer to build this, right? And out the gate, that's going to eliminate a lot of people.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Is.
You people that are saying, yo, I'm passionate about fitness. I'm passionate about, you know, pottery or whatever the case may be. Are you willing to suffer for it?
Yep.
You willing to suffer for it, right? So we identify what our passions are, but on the other side of that, as I said, it's twofold. And again, that's my kids in the background. If you guys can hear them.
No,
No,
you're
my
good. You're
kids
good.
making sound too, so you're good.
But on the other side of that, right, your passion is attached to a purpose, right? Meaning it provides value to others. In what ways do you have the capacity to add value to the lives of others, right? There's
Mhm.
problems that people are facing. You know what I mean? There's difficulties that individuals are experiencing. But for every problem, there is a solution, right? And that solution is created by an individual, a
Mhm.
group of people, an organization, right? People that are working towards a specific cause. In what ways is your passion providing value for others? Maybe you are funny and you know you always been a class clown. You're providing value for individuals because you're giving them humor. You're
Mhm.
providing some type of escape when you're on stage and you're doing a stand-up, right? You're creating an experience that's stimulating positive emotions that improve an individual's well-being, right? That's like on like a more dissected approach to something that can be so simple as just doing stand-up, which in many ways is not simple at all. That's one of the most complicated
Oh yeah. Oh
any
yeah.
individual can have, right? You know, a speaker can deliver, you know, the same speech, you know, 5 times in a row at 5 different events. But if a comic is on stage and they're delivering the same jokes over and over again, they're like, hey, man, this is getting old. You know what I mean?
Right.
You have to constantly create content on a
Yes.
consistent basis, but that's neither here nor there. But nonetheless, what I'm saying is, you know, identify what you love, identify what you're interested in and what you're willing to suffer for.
Mhm.
And then also identify some problems that individuals are facing, problems that are happening in the world. How can you attach the two of those?
Yeah.
That's where your purpose lies.
Yeah.
That's where your purpose lies, where your calling is and the needs of the world. And when those two things meet, that's what your purpose is.
That's great. That's great. And when you discover that, a lot of things in you have to change too, right? You have to develop new behaviors, new habits, new rituals, new disciplines, because this isn't a 1 month, 2 month thing. You're changing your life at that moment.
Yeah.
And you have to change your life one step at a time, but you have to change your life every single day.
Yeah.
And it has to, so things like a morning routine, people kind of hear morning routines and they're not really sure exactly what it entails or what it means to the people who implement them daily, right? So, for you now, do you have a morning routine you stick to, and what does that kind of mean to you?
Absolutely. That's something that I highly preach, as it relates to anybody that's aiming to create some type of personal transformation. You're working towards personal achievement, or ultimately just aiming to be the best version of you. You have to set the tone for your day, right? Because, for many people, we can often wake up and the first thing that we do, we may check our phone. You know what I mean? And you're looking through text messages, you're scrolling through emails, or maybe you're on social media. And of course, you can aim to curate your feed the best that you can. But at the end of the day, you're not controlling what it is that you're consuming when you're opening up your cell phone device, right? You can get some news, you can get a deal that didn't go through, and you get that email and you're reading that first thing. That can really put a dent in your attitude, right? Or, a video pops up on social media that you don't necessarily agree with, and it may upset you, right? And you're starting your day with that frame of mind. And I tell many people, in so many ways, many people often react to their challenges rather than responding. And the difference between the two of those is that when I react to something, I allow my emotions to make my decisions for me. But when I respond to something, I place mind over matter and I process what's happening. I review the information, and now I make a sound decision that places me in alignment with my vision, my purpose, and my goals. And I say that to say, you're not in that mental space unless you prime yourself to be there. And that's the benefit of a morning routine.
Mhm.
And I encourage many people, right? There's no one way to do it, right? It's not about the right way for everyone. It's about the right way for you, right? It can be meditation, visualization, speaking affirmations, journaling, reading, scripture, devotion, prayer, yoga, movement, training at the gym, whatever the case may be.
Mhm.
Ultimately, I encourage everyone, find what works best for you, but at least allocate 5-10 minutes a day to develop clarity, to go within, to
Yep.
establish the intention that you have, right? Determine your focus. Where your focus goes, your energy flows. But we have to be, intentional, so to speak, about how we are showing up each and every single day. And this is what's going to build momentum as we step into everyday's opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. And does that sometimes evolve? So say, the routine, so to speak. Now we're talking about, I'm a proponent of it could and should probably evolve because
Yeah.
your life will evolve. So
Yeah.
your morning routine will never stay the same. Over time, it will have to change and you'll add things and take things away because things won't be applicable to you anymore.
Yeah.
So it's important, I think, to put that out to our audience as well. Morning routines are lovely. They are everything we base our days around. What you just said there, man, is spot on.
Yeah.
But it will change, and it's supposed to, because if you're growing, everything around you is changing.
And listen, we're three fathers here.
Oh, no doubt.
I mean, like your morning routine look different in your bachelor life.
Oh, yeah.
In comparison to what it is now when you got a whole family and you got kids, and you know what I mean? As soon as they get up, it's just nonstop.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Right. That's why you got to get your stuff in before.
Yeah,
So
you get it in
know?
before. But again, to your point, I strongly agree. It evolves, it changes as you grow and as you develop. There may be some things that aren't necessarily bad, but in this season or chapter that you're in, you're like, hey, I don't necessarily need this, or doesn't serve me in the same way it used to.
Mhm.
I'm gonna adopt this practice, right?
Right. Exactly.
One person may say, hey, again, I'm into visualization, and I'm sitting, or maybe meditation, and I sit for 10 or 15 minutes and process how I'm feeling and what I'm thinking, and I write that down in my journal. Another person may say, hey, I'm evolving from that stage, and now I'm doing cold plunging, right? First thing in the morning, I'm jumping into a cold plunge and stimulating my nervous system. And in that case, I'm also doing some deep breathing exercises. But ultimately, again, I encourage everybody, just experiment with what works best for you, right?
Yep.
And every morning doesn't have to look the same, right? Maybe this morning you did visualization, the next morning you do a cold plunge, or another morning you're doing, meditation, and then a day after that you're doing yoga. Ultimately, the key is stay consistent with living your days by design and not by default. You know what I mean? The average person just wakes up and is like, okay, whatever the day offers, I'll see what today's gonna look like. But no, extraordinary
Pathway to madness right there.
Yeah, extraordinary leaders, they step into every day and say, you know what? Here's my intention. This is what we're going to create. This is the energy that I'm going to represent. This is what I'm going to accomplish as I step into this day. And again, if we can live our days by design, we'll build momentum towards where we want to be in life.
Yeah. And you know what I love about that too is, the morning routine that we've cultivated, we've taken from people that we admire from afar. We call them mentors. It could be from podcasts or books that we've read. And there are some tools that we took from them and we applied them. And you know what? We said it wasn't for us.
Yeah.
And that's what you can do. You can take some tools from here, some tools from there, and you can create your own toolbox for stuff that can work for you. John and I meditate. He has a different form of meditation than I do. His is more movement, but we both meditate because it clears our mind.
Yeah.
And that's how you really start the morning. What I really want to focus on now is like when you are coaching and when you're working with leaders, how do you get them to integrate productive habits into their lives? Do you normally start with the morning routine, or is it like small changes to get them to understand the importance of meaningful habits and changing their behaviors?
Well, first and foremost, we have to begin with what's driving us. Everybody's driven by something. You know what I mean? There's a desire that we have, whether it's consciously aware or subconsciously stored within us, and we have to unpack it. There's something that is motivating you, so to speak, internally. Once we can identify that, that's where we build everything else around. You know what I mean? So we have to start connecting with what our values are. You know what I mean? Like what are you truly passionate about? What are the things that you're aiming to experience, and what ways are you aiming to grow? Ultimately, it's like typing in the GPS. Here's the destination, you know?
Mhm.
Then once we have the destination, we also need to become aware of where we're at. GPS system won't work well if it doesn't know exactly where you're at. Now that we know where we're at, where we're aiming to go, we can reverse engineer that route to start from where we're at now.
Yeah.
Right? So for many people, it's different. For one person, it may be, hey, you need to adjust, your habits, your day-to-day routine, where you're investing your time, who you're spending your time with, what you're consuming. Another person, it may be, hey, we need to unpack some subconscious beliefs that have been limiting you and sabotaging your growth and stunting your progress. And again, all of us have that issue. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I wouldn't say issue, right? I want to be very, very intentional with my words, but ultimately all of us have those areas of improvement where we
Right.
have beliefs that aren't necessarily true, beliefs that we've grown accustomed to that no longer serve us, or beliefs that ultimately may be hindering us from tapping into our personal power. But ultimately, we have to identify where we're at, where we want to go, and then we can begin to unpack, okay, here's what steps we need to take in order for us to get there. This belief is getting in your way. This habit has been hindering you, right? The things that you've been entertaining and consuming, they're not in alignment with where you want to go. We need to make an adjustment. Does that make sense?
Total sense.
Yeah. And so I want to kind of throw another question at you as well with that, because we talked about our families, them being our why. And
Yeah.
oftentimes when we're talking with people, when we're working with people, because we're personal trainers as well, they'll say, oh, I want to get in shape, for me or something. Or, we'll ask them, well, why do you want to do that? Well, it's for my family.
Yeah.
And we feel that the way to really get someone to change is to really unpack their why. Like,
Mhm.
why do you want to change? And it has to be something other than yourself, because oftentimes we don't hold ourselves to a high enough standard.
Yeah.
But when you can say, okay, my why is for something other than myself, so it could be for someone or something, that's when you can kind of stir up the emotions and you
Yeah.
can kind of uncover, okay, this is why I need to get healthy.
Yeah.
This is why I need to go on my mission and find my purpose in life, because I need to do it for my boys, where I need to show them what a good man looks like.
Yeah.
Do you feel when you're working with people, do you feel like you need to have them uncover their why to get the most out of them?
Well, it's one of the greatest forces as it relates to our behavior. And for many people, in some cases, it may take some time for them to truly process, what really is their why. But of course, to truly create a transformation and to be game changing for an individual, you've got to connect with that. And here's the reason why, fellas. Um, One of the greatest influences on our behavior is ultimately the emotional state that we are in, right? Think about that for a moment. Everybody watching this or tuning in or listening to the podcast, think about how you may behave when you're angry in comparison to how you behave when you're joyful or excited or you're happy, right? It can be night or day. You
Totally.
haven't changed, but your emotional state has shifted. And a lot of times, the emotional states that we are in influences ultimately how we behave in any given situation. This is, in fact, one of the rules of our mind. If there's a battle between emotion and logic, typically emotion is going to win that battle. You know what I mean? If I'm afraid, and logic can say, rationally, there's nothing to be afraid of, but this emotion internally, it feels real, right? You're having a panic attack, and ultimately, nothing is to be afraid of or to be feared in that moment. It's the perception that you have about the situation that's creating that fear. But that fear is dictating how you think, how you show up, and ultimately how you behave in any given situation. With that understanding, What's attached to our why? It's an emotion, right? So if we want to influence how we behave, how we show up in different spaces, how we stay consistent or disciplined with our goals and our dreams, we have to connect with that why, right? And again, for many people, it's a journey to get to that. But ultimately, that why will empower you to do things. And in many ways, you didn't know you had the capabilities within you to do.
That's
I
so
had,
true.
so I've been blessed, man, with the content that I create. I do a broadcast, and I've been doing this since 2015, when the application known as Periscope was launched. I had this goal, right? Every day, I wanted to inspire at least one person. My brother introduced me to this live stream app, and from then, I just started going live. And out of that was birthed what we call the Dreamcatchers Worldwide broadcast. It's a broadcast that's now on YouTube and Facebook. I go live every Monday, just sharing insights for young professionals and mindset shifts to individuals, so they can step into the week with an empowered mentality. But ultimately, through that, I've been blessed to connect with amazing people like you, right, on social media. And one person in particular, I had one person that's a part of my community. He's studying in Florida. He was at the time. I believe he's graduated now. I know he's graduated, but at the time he was in school and was aiming to become a surgeon. And he hit me up and was like, yo, D1, I'm loving the posts. I'm loving the broadcast, the stream, the energy. But really, man, I got to connect with you. It's a tough time for me. A lot going on in school. Man, it's more than I even expected. And it's extremely overwhelming. I moved over here away from my family, and I feel lonely. And really, man, I feel like dropping out, and I can't take this anymore. All the exams, all the studying, all the group, the group test and things of that nature. He's just expressing how he's feeling, right? So I allowed him some space to vent. But in that moment, fellas, I knew what was going to help him get out of the situation that he was in was a perspective shift, right? A shift in his mindset. And as he began to talk to me, I said, man, what's your goal? He said, man, to become a surgeon, and I want to do this to help people. And I said, here's what you have to understand. His name was Keegan. I said, Keegan, you're not studying to get an A on an exam. You're not studying to pass a class. You're not studying to walk across that stage and to get your degree, right? Of course, those are byproducts of you studying. But the reason why you're studying and why it's important for you to stay consistent with this is because you're studying for the day that when you're in the surgery room and you are the only thing that stands in front of death and your patient, that's why you're studying. And in that moment, like,
His mind was blown.
exactly. It was quiet for a moment because he understood this is the assignment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is why I do what I do. And often, fellas, we got to understand that everybody listening, man, the challenge that you are facing is designed to force you in a position where you forget why you do what you do. You know what you're doing. You know what I mean? You're doing it. But in many cases, we become blinded to why we do what we do. And remember, emotion is the greatest influence in our behavior, and every why is attached to a positive emotion. If you can remember why you do what you do, that positive emotion will equip you to stay consistent, to remain disciplined. But it's in those moments of challenge and difficulty and adversity that we blind ourselves. We do it, right? Because we're focused on the problem. We're focused on the pain. We're focused on the trouble. We're focused on the challenge. And we lose sight of the purpose. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Your purpose will equip you to do things that are out of your character that you didn't know you can do, right? Like, God forbid, let's look at it from this perspective. God forbid one of our children is trapped inside of a house that's burning, and you pull up and the firefighters are out on the outside and they're looking, and you hear your baby crying, right? What are you doing?
Anything.
You're getting anything you can do, get in that house.
You're getting in there. But pause, wait for a second. It's a terrifying environment. It's a risk that you're taking. It's hot. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's extremely like something that you should be terrified of, right? But because of the love that you have for what's on the inside of that, you're willing to go against all of that, toe to toe, to save something that you love.
Yeah.
The
Absolutely.
same
Emotion
is
right
true.
there.
We got to keep in mind, man, that vision that you have, that dream that you have set, the calling that's over your life, that's something that you've birthed. You've birthed. In a lot of ways, it's on the inside, and there's something that's actually trying to destroy it. You know what I mean? Whether it's society, whether it's your problems, whether it's your past, you got to run into that crib, right? Even though it's burning, even though it seems terrifying, even though everybody has given up on it, you got to run into that crib to save what's yours.
Yeah.
And what equips you and empowers you to do that is the purpose behind it. You got a relationship. You know, you got a relationship with your baby.
Yeah.
You communicate with your child. The same is true with you and your goal, man. You got to speak this into existence. You got to associate yourself with that vision. You got to embody that to the point that it becomes a part of you.
Yes. And you said it right there.
When it's a part of you, I'm gonna fight for this.
Exactly. And you said it right there, where you got to speak it into existence, because you'll say it and it will fall on deaf ears, because it's not meant for those ears that are being spoken to. It is for you, right? So let's talk about that. Speaking to you, speaking to yourself. How do you utilize positive self-talk? Because it is a very underutilized tool in both Brian and my eyes. You know, we see that as something that's not seen as important as it should be. So talk a little bit about positive self-talk and how you utilize it.
Man, fellas, what helped me adopt really the power and like leveraging the power of self-talk is that guy right there.
Tupac?
No, not Tupac. Tupac.
I can't see. I can't see where you're pointing over there.
Right there, Muhammad Ali.
All right. I got Muhammad Ali right here.
Right there. There you go. There you go. Cassius Marcellus Clay, his born name, right? And so, like I mentioned earlier, right, I was competing for USA Boxing. I competed for about 11 years. Now, initially, when I stepped into the sport, like anything, I want to be the best that I can be. So, of course, I studied the craft, and I came across all these different Ali fights and really fell in love with his style, right? His charisma, his confidence. And of course, not only would I see his fights, look, I'm going on YouTube and just looking up all these different fights, him and Kenny Norton, Joe Frazier, George Foreman, of course, you know, and even, you know, in his earlier days where, man, he was just dominating the space. We had never seen anything like this before, particularly in the heavyweight division. And I was just amazed by the confidence that Ali had, right? You know, he would get on, you know, screen as he's being interviewed, and he's like, I'm floating like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Your fist can't hit what your eyes can't see. Rumble, young man, rumble. Right? A poetic flow to it.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember watching one particular interview, fellas, where he was talking about his journey in winning the heavyweight title. Now, Ali competed against Sonny Liston. Not for sure if you guys know anything about Sonny Liston, but Sonny Liston was a bona fide gangster, a highly feared man, not just in boxing. He had ties to the mafia, right? So you got this kid from Louisville, Kentucky, that's calling him out because at a young age, he had told himself, man, I want to be a heavyweight champion. This is who I want to be. He won the gold medal. He's been knocking dudes out. Didn't get the respect because he was young and they said he talked too much. Now the only thing standing in front of him and what he wants to do and what he wants to become is Sonny Liston. Now he's calling Sonny Liston out. Sonny Liston finally gives him an opportunity. The press is all over it. Nobody gave Ali a chance. Not a single person, right? Boxing analysts, sportscasters, Vegas odds, everybody's betting against Ali, right? And mind you, the promoter of the boxing event took out additional insurance because everybody believed Ali was not just going to get beat. Some people thought he was going to get killed in the ring, physically killed by Sonny Liston. But Ali kept talking. Man, he's too ugly to be the world's champ. The world's champ should be pretty like me. just talking and talking. I'm going to knock him out. I'm going to jab him. I'm going to stick and dance all night. The 8th round, he's going down, right? Just talking. But in the interview, they said, Ali, man, you were speaking with so much confidence. He said, most people don't recognize this. I was terrified of Sonny Liston. And it hit me. I'm like, man, hold on. He said, people don't recognize and realize I wasn't talking to Sonny Liston. He said, I was talking to me.
Wow.
Then what he said, fellas, really stuck with me to this day. And this is where, I adopted the mindset of positive affirmations and speaking things into existence. Ali said, it's the repetition of affirmations that leads to belief. And once that belief becomes a deep conviction, that's when amazing things begin to happen. Again, everybody and their mama said Ali's going to get killed. In the 8th round, Sonny Liston sat there in the corner and said, I can't take no more. And in that moment, that's when we got one of the world's most famous quotes. I shook up the world. I shook up the world.
Yeah.
I am the greatest.
I am the greatest.
The world. And I tell people that because we have to understand, man, when you affirm yourself, when you speak life over yourself, when you develop the habit of encouraging yourself and speaking things into existence, you can shake up your world. Not only your world, but the world around you. You can create positive changes in your community. You can build that business. You can make a difference for that cause that you're working towards. But it starts with you buying into the belief that this is possible. And we have to understand, fellas, your belief will always carry more power than your reality.
Yeah.
Again, Ali, nobody believed in this man probably until it was only his mama and his brother and his family. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's so true.
And
but his
belief,
because his belief carries more power than his reality, your belief will shape your reality.
Yes.
It can redefine your reality. It can transform your reality. I say that to say this. I don't care whatever it is that you're working towards. Don't matter what it currently looks like. Doesn't matter who said you couldn't do it. Doesn't matter what you're currently up against. Doesn't matter what resources you may think you're lacking, what qualifications you feel as if you don't have. You need to instill a belief that this is possible. This is possible. Not only that, but you got to believe deeply in yourself. And again, it's the repetition of those affirmations that lead to belief. And once that belief becomes a deep conviction, that's when amazing things begin to happen.
Love that.
It's true. It's true. Because, and the other thing too is people have to realize that you're the only one that needs to believe in yourself.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be people that, even people that love you or you love them that are going to doubt you. But it's when you believe in yourself, that is when amazing things can happen. I love that. I love that. So David, you're the executive producer of the Quest series, right? A documentary series on small businesses. What is the mission of the Quest?
Threefold. So the Quest was birthed out of the pandemic. Of course, during quarantine, we all had time to kind of sit down and reflect and process life, right? At that time, fellas, I was really looking for ways that I can add more value, right? And as I began to look for ways that I can add value, I took this journey of, introspection, where I began to ask myself, like, what am I truly passionate about? Came up with 3 things that I'm passionate about. Passionate about encouraging and empowering others. I'm passionate about filmmaking, right? And telling stories. And also passionate about small business, right? I had I studied marketing in school. And of course, marketing is nothing more than monetized psychology. So, I tied all those things together, so to speak. And that's where the series was birthed, where I said, man, I can create a series where we're sharing stories. Stories are very empowering, inspiring. And we're also sharing advice and insights as it relates to small business. And we can tell this in an engaging and entertaining way through visuals. And ultimately, the mission of the Quest is to, 1, amplify the stories of small business owners, right? Huge advocate for shopping local because, local businesses are what help run and drive our economy. They're creating jobs and opportunities. Small businesses are what are potential, or in a lot of cases, giving to nonprofits and causes within our communities. So that's something I'm very passionate about. But then also not only did we want to amplify the stories of small business owners, but I wanted to educate and empower aspiring entrepreneurs, because I'm quite sure many of you, both of us or all of us, so to speak, I'm saying many of you people that are listening and tuning into this podcast, we connect with people that we know are gifted, we know are talented, we know have great and brilliant ideas, but we often convince ourselves that, hey, maybe it's not for me, or I don't believe I can truly do this, or I don't think I have what it takes to run and lead a small business. And sharing these stories helps bring to the forefront that people that are successful in these entrepreneurial ventures, they don't have it all together like many people often assume they do. You know what I mean? Like, we often assume that this person had a handout or this person had all the resources. And when we start sharing these stories, we start seeing, man, this person had grit. This person thrived. This person was resourceful, right? They figured things out, right? This person, battled through a chronic illness, but still overcame that and succeeded in the space of small business, right? So ultimately, the mission is to share these stories to help shift the perspectives of individuals that are aiming to do something, but in many ways afraid to take that initial step. And I'm hoping that season after season, ultimately, it encourages individuals to say, I'm going to get out of my own way. And this thing that I'm aiming to build, I'm going to take the necessary steps to do it.
That's amazing, man. That is awesome.
Man. So listen, tonight was one of those nights where you get to link up with someone we never met before this, right? Of the same mindset you are. That's the base of what we knew tonight. We are of the same mindset on some level.
Yeah.
Well, it's always amazing when you can connect with someone and then learn from them at the same time like that. And tonight, BG, I don't want to speak for you, man. I learned a lot tonight from you, David. You are one of one. You are a special guy. We appreciate you coming on, man. This was fantastic. Everyone who listens, this is one of those note-taking podcasts. Like, grab a pen and pad and take some notes, because some of the stuff David talked about tonight was very, very important and special. So, man, thank you so much for coming on with us. We really appreciate it.
Oh, man, fellas, I consider it a pleasure and an honor, man. I can recall when we first connected on Instagram, I had a chance to kind of review your page, and instantly, like you said, it resonated. It's like, yo, man, we're on the same frequency.
Yeah.
We're speaking the same language and working towards the same mission to help individuals master their mindset. You know what I mean? As the model mindset, so to speak, is what you fellas are preaching, man. So I'm right there with you, man. Keep putting in the work. Continue to lead this mission because it's desperately needed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Mindset is something that so many people struggle with, whether they're battling a mental health issue, fighting some type of challenge, or just aiming to be better. And there's those limiting beliefs that are stopping them. The work that you all are doing and the content that you're putting out is ultimately providing tools and strategies to help individuals maintain an effective mindset. So keep up the great work.
Appreciate you, man.
Thank you, David. And where can everyone find you? See your content you're producing, and of course, be inspired.
Yeah, so the website elevationisamust.com. Take advantage of all the free resources that are available there. I put out a weekly newsletter every Thursday that provides a mindset shift, an effective strategy, a personal growth tool that you can begin to apply. It's digestible content that I put out, and then there's calls to action every single week as it relates to success practices. Maybe it's a breathing exercise or a mindset shift, or a way that you can adjust your perspective. Ultimately, just kind of providing a tool for young professionals to help them again maintain that effective mindset. And then on social media at D and then one, the number one, Gibson, Gibson, and that's on Instagram, Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, but Twitter, and then youtube.com/David Gibson. That's where the quest is available. We'll be launching the upcoming season in a couple of weeks. Extremely excited about this project, man. Talk about stretching you. Man, I mean, we can do a whole episode just on the series in and of itself, on how that stretched me in so many ways, man. But I know the value that it's going to be providing others is going to be well worth it. But ultimately, to make it easy, elevationisamust.com. That's where all of my handles and links are available.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you, David. This is awesome, and keep inspiring, man. You are motivating as hell.
I appreciate it, man. Appreciate it, brothers.
All right, take care.
Same to you.